Little Tommy was only 9 years old, and ever since he could remember, he had been terrified of the attic in his family home. It was just him and his mom and dad that lived in the two-story home. But it always felt to him like there were things that lived there that he couldn't see and couldn't comprehend. Almost like another family lived there. Ever since Tommy could remember, he had heard noises coming from all areas of his house. More often than not, though, the noises would come from the attic above his bedroom. Anytime Tommy brought these noises up to his parents, they would shrug them off as night terrors and tell Tommy that he has always had his wild imagination and that he was completely safe in the house. His dad assured him of this and told Tommy that he had checked the attic thoroughly many times. In fact, this is where he kept all their holiday decor, so when it was time to start decorating the house in a few months, then Tommy could join him in bringing it all down. Tommy looked up at the attic door as his father told him this, and shook his head. No matter how many times Tommy's parents would reassure him that the house was safe, something still felt off. He felt rather safe during the daytime, but once nighttime arrived, he hated being alone in this house. He felt that the house would awaken. So that night, when his mom kissed him on his forehead, told him good night, and shut his bedroom door, he was right back to being terrified, like he was every night that they left him in the silence of his dark room. Per usual, Tommy heard noises coming from the attic directly above him. Scratching noises, to be exact, followed by growls and then some whimpers. Tommy threw the covers over his body to try to help control the shaking. After about an hour of the noises coming and going, the noises eventually stopped, and Tommy eventually found a way to fall asleep. The following morning, when Tommy awoke, he let out an audible sigh of relief. Back to safety, he thought to himself. The night terrors he was having really were encompassing his thoughts, and it was really affecting him. He told himself he would need to find a way to forget about the house being haunted and get back to reality. That was until he rolled out of bed and noticed that his bedroom door had been wide open. With confusion on his face, Tommy confronted his parents when he got downstairs to the kitchen. He told them about the noises again and told them that his bedroom door was opened up even though he really remembered Mom closing it shut. The parents looked at each other with equal confusion as Tommy had. His mother began questioning whether she really had shut his door, or maybe that his father had checked in on him in the middle of the night and forgot to close the door. Either way, it was apparent that Tommy's parents were not going to buy into what he was telling them. Poor Tommy felt as if he were alone. Later that evening, as the night approached, Tommy was alone. And Tommy kept telling himself that he needed to remain brave. That his father had searched the attic. He had searched the whole house for that matter. And that there was nothing that could seriously harm him. Tommy was realizing the more that he told himself how brave he was, the more brave he felt. So after Tommy crawled into his bed that night, and after his mom went through his bedtime routine, kissing him on his forehead, telling him goodnight, and shutting his bedroom door, he shrugged the noises off that he was hearing, and went to sleep rather quickly. It wasn't until Tommy heard growling coming from his doorway that he awoke in the middle of the night. He felt as if he could not move his body. Only his eyes were mobile, and he aimed them in the direction of his bedroom door. With his blurry vision and his motionless body, Tommy could spot that his door was wide open to his bedroom, and there was a shadow hunched over in front of it, still growling in his direction. Little Tommy had begun praying that his body would get the strength to move, but it remained at rest. The figure began slowly moving towards him, still growling, as he laid there helpless. Once the shadow fully enveloped his space, the growling stopped. "Tommy!" the figure yelled, before cackling in Tommy's face. Then the shadow disappeared on all fours through his bedroom door. Tommy laid there, motionless for the rest of the night. The next morning, when Tommy awoke, he felt as if he hadn't gotten an ounce of sleep. He could feel it in his eyes. They felt baggy. He peered over to his bedroom door, which remained closed. Young Tommy sat in his bed for a while, trying to piece together details of the hazy night before. He remembered everything: the door being open, not being able to move his body, the disturbing shadow figure. But he couldn't wrap his head around whether it was real. Tommy attempted to bring this up to his parents later in the day, but they were over it at this point. Tommy's dad pulled him to the side and sternly told him that these night terrors would have to stop. He was worried about him, but the house isn't haunted. There's nothing in the attic, and the family was completely safe. He briefly mentioned to little Tommy that they may begin exploring medical treatment in an attempt to help him. Tommy stood there silent in his uncertainty about everything he had heard and seen. Throughout the rest of summer, Tommy had continued life as a normal boy, playing with friends, going to play sports in the park, going to water parks. Anything outdoors Tommy loved. In fact, he loved anything that got him out in the sun. It was always when the sun went down when the horror began. And, inevitably, the sun would always go down, and Tommy would inevitably wind up in his bed all alone at night, and he would, inevitably, hear scratching coming from the attic and the vents in his room. In the middle of the night, Tommy was awoken by a loud bang. Tommy shot up from his bed, eyes wide open. He then heard a thud, then movement coming from outside of his bedroom. He heard sniffing coming from his closed bedroom door. Tommy sat there petrified. The noise eventually stopped. After about an hour of Tommy sitting in his bed, not moving a muscle, he decided he needed to be brave and get proof that the house really was haunted. He needed to go wake up his parents. So Tommy got out of bed and opened his bedroom door. He noticed immediately that the trap door that led to the attic was hanging open. The lock was dangling off the side as if it were broken. He could only see the darkness that this opening created. Tommy took one step to peer into the downstairs living area. He saw that same dark, ghostly figure crawling on all fours around the dining room table, sniffing around. It was tough to see it clearly, as the only light source that provided any light was streaming through the windows from the light posts on the street. The figure's gaze shot up to Tommy. It let out a growl, then began charging towards the stairs. Tommy, in a panic, rushed back into his room, shut his bedroom door, locked the door, and jumped back into bed, shivering from fear. He heard growling and scratching coming from the bedroom door. Tommy threw his bed covers over him and began crying himself to sleep. Tommy's mom knocked politely on his bedroom door the next morning. "Wakey, wakey, it's time for breakfast," she said through the door. After no reply, Tommy's mom knocked once more, then twisted the door handle and poked the creaking door open. Tommy had his covers draped over him with his back turned from the door. Tommy's mom could see that he was shaking under the covers. "Tommy, what's the matter, sweetheart?" she said as she approached his bed. As she stepped closer, she noticed blood. To be more specific, she noticed a blood trail leading across the bedroom floor, up the wall, and into the vent just below the ceiling. She noticed a little foot sticking out from the vent, motionless. Tommy's mom took a deep breath. "No, no, no," she whispered to herself before she threw the covers off the bed. She saw her son lying there, grinning, with blood dripping down his face. Not her poor Tommy, as he was clearly stuffed in the vent, but the deformed one, the one that she and her husband kept hidden in their attic all these years.